Well, good evening. This is John Sarver. I'm on the board of the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, and welcome to one of our Thursday evening Zooms. And what I'd first like to do is to thank our sponsors, the State Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, Homeland Solar, McNaught and McKay, Iron Ridge Racking, and Harvest Solar. I know many of you are members of GLREA. If you're not, you may want to consider joining. We're trying to get a constituency that can kind of help us to promote renewable energy and favorable state policies. The other thing I'd like to mention is that this is just a series of Thursday evening Zooms. The first Thursday is typically an Ann Arbor solar story, hosted by Julie Roth. And then the second Thursday is the Renewable Energy Seminar hosted by Mark Clevey. The third Thursday is a Detroit Solar Story hosted by Diane Van Buren, and I get to host the fourth Thursday, which is typically my solar story. It's my pleasure to have Jim Leidel join us tonight to kind of talk about his low carbon hybrid house. Boy, he's got solar, micro-CHP, which for some people, they might not realize it's combined heat and power, and also battery system. And Jim and I go quite a ways back. For the past 5 or so years, he's been working for DTE Gas with commercial and industrial customers, helping them with CHP and solar and other sorts of technologies. He spent 16 years working at Oakland University, first as the energy manager, and then as the director of the Energy Research Center there. And so Jim has a lot of good experience that he's going to share with us tonight. And please mute yourself until we get to the Q&A period. Please mute yourself. Jim's going to talk for about 20-30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And go ahead, Jim.
Alrighty. Well, I don't use Zoom a lot, so if I make a misstep, I apologize in advance. But hello. This is a presentation that's kind of a work in progress for my project here. I apologize for the folks that aren't real big fans of DTE. I've been with DTE for 5 years on the gas side. There are some gas solutions that I think are clean and sustainable and the part of the future energy mix for a sustainable low carbon future, and I can talk about that. But this, some of the folks that know.
Yep. Jim, you may want to put your presentation on full screen.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there you go. Let's see here.
Welcome.
Hello. So this is a lengthy presentation. I'll probably rush through it. If you have some questions, we can always follow up with some questions, and I can send more information to people. It's basically a microgrid or a nanogrid. And I know folks here are real keen about solar, so I used a local Rochester Hills solar company, building integrated solar from the Allen brothers, Gary and Robert Allen, which is Luma. And I will show some stuff about that, as well as the whole design. It's a retrofit. And that's challenging with code. I'm learning a lot about code and things I've made a mistake on and things need to be tweaked a bit. But the idea is like a hybrid car. You've got a smaller battery and a smaller engine, a smaller electric drive that you would have for a full EV. So that's the same concept. You have a much lower requirement for your solar because you're hybridizing it. There's sometimes where you're going to lean on the engine generators, a natural gas engine generator, a 1.5 kilowatt unit. It's basically a little Aishin is a Toyota group company, so it's a little, I believe, a Toyota motorcycle engine variant. And it's a retrofit of my whole house. So I did some weatherization and LED lighting changes and a lot of little improvements, attic insulation. It's an older, not too well constructed Pulte home here in Rochester Hills, Michigan. But this is a pretty modest sized solar project, and the battery and full solar commissioning has not been completed yet. So that's work in progress. I do have a lot of stuff, so I'll keep moving here. So the heart of the system is really CHP and the battery. I think even my 3.8 kilowatt system. Solar system is a little large, although it is west facing, so I'm not going to get the full capacity. It's direct due west facing with no sun. I'll show you some pictures about that. So yes, it does use the natural gas grid for the generator, which produces hot water and heat and power. I'm sorry. It's connected to the DTE side of things. The DTE electric is minimized, and the CHP is actually installed on the service panel that is grid interactive, grid tied. And then I ended up designing it to leave the solar and battery system off grid. So I got basically a UPS system. So the majority of the breakers, about 80% of the house, is off grid and not even connected to the AC, DTE AC. I don't have any desiccant dehumidification. That's a future possibility. But I have pretty much unlimited hot water in the summertime. Whoops, what happened? And then I have a little bit of interaction with the furnace. I have a duct coil. I did a energy audit 3-4 years ago and started picking away at the efficiency items. It's a pretty leaky house. The air blower test showed it to be quite leaky. So I'm not quite finished with that, but R60 in the attic and picking away at a lot of little things. It's all LED, fairly efficient, but it's still a work in progress. So a new domestic hot water heater, instantaneous hot water heater, and the HVAC fan and furnace remain. I did put a duct coil in, and then I'm separating out the breakers. So I'm going to have the existing load panel for the utility, and that'll have my air conditioner, my 240 volt air conditioner, and my 240 volt electric stove. And then I'm also doing a 240 volt DC battery charger. So there is grid backup to my battery system, but it's DC. It's a DC link for this little microgrid. And the remainder of the house will be off grid as a DC microgrid. Well, it's an AC microgrid, but it's connected to the utility from a DC link. And the micro-CHP is actually connected on the AC side. So I've got a few things I have to study as we go through here. Let's see. Can you see the very top of the screen? My little menu bar here is blocking off the top. But so on the right, I'll start with the solar. The solar goes through a charge controller. So like a typical DC system. And I've got this large, I'm repurposing a rack mount LG battery system, although I might not be able to use it. My local code officials were a bit confused about the complexity in my system, and I couldn't find any good contractors. So I did all the work myself, except for the roof. I'm doing electrical piping, everything myself. So that I did make a few little mistakes that I have to rectify per code, some venting issues that I didn't do quite right. So that did pose a challenge. So anything that's not UL listed, I mean, if you live out in the country in a very lax jurisdiction, you'll probably be fine. But my guys, their radar's up and they're really raking me over. They're good guys. They're very good guys. They know what they're doing. So it'll all be better in the end, but I'm learning about the code. So micro-CHP in the grid serves the 240 volt side that will also have a battery charger. So this off-grid system, I'll have 6 power meters that are not connected yet. So I'm going to meter it fairly well. And then this is more of a detailed diagram, which I'm not going to spend any time on, but if anybody wants to talk more about it, the off-grid is the majority of the systems over here, but the DTE connected side is over here with the micro-CHP. So it's a UL listed, Japanese built micro-CHP, 1.5 kilowatts. Hot water. Here's my natural gas heating HVAC system. The micro-CHP produces hot water into a 60-gallon tank. And really the instantaneous water heater does not work at all, except in the winter time. I can dump in some heat into the furnace. So, and I've got to add a little control algorithm that says if the hot water tank is too cold, like below 120 or 110 degrees, then that function stops. But in the summertime, I have unlimited hot water. I should invite my neighbors over to do laundry and take baths and things because it's just tons of hot water. I'm going to put a thermal dump, because when the hot water tank is topped off at like 160 some degrees, it'll shut down the engine. So the engine cannot run with no place to put the heat. So I might put an outdoor radiator, a thermal dump in the future, probably next spring. There's 4 gas meters that are operating. I deleted this underfloor heater. I was a little bit ambitious. The BTU output is quite modest. I think it's like 20,000 BTUs per hour when the engine's running at full blast. It modulates. It's programmed to not export. So there is no export. DT was not too fond about, or the DT electric interconnection was interesting. They thought it was solar. They didn't understand it. It's just cogeneration. The terminology cogeneration might be more familiar, or combined heat and power, CHP, combined heat and power. It is natural gas. So the old Rider 16, the parallel interconnect with net metering, would not apply, and the new distributed generation tariff, Rider 18, would not apply because it's natural gas fired. So basically, we said we're not going to export. There will be no export. I don't want to do that. So it's programmed to not export. Although in the right jurisdiction, where you get retail value from CHP to export, which makes sense in my mind, that would make you money, but we don't have that at our disposal. Anyway, this is the diagram for hot water. There are other systems I could put you in touch with, a number of, 5 kilowatt. There's a 4.8 kilowatt made in Wisconsin. Yanmar has some. The new company went out of business and came back, is called Gridiron. They got a 20 kilowatt. And there's a handful of smaller micro-CHPs out there. I could put you in touch if you're interested. Small commercial, residential. It's kind of pricey for per kilowatt, but it has the capacity to run pretty much continuously. So the idea is to make it small enough that it runs continuously. The ideal sweet spot for CHP, when I do a study for a hospital or a university or a large industrial customer, you want to make it small enough that it runs many hours, if not continuously. You use all the electricity behind the meter and use all the heat. You don't dispose any heat. And that efficiency and the fact that methane or natural gas is the lowest carbon fuel, it really has a low carbon contribution to your sustainability goals. We still have a lot of coal in this state. I know that's a sore spot, but CHP running, like at Oakland University, we put in a 5 megawatt gas turbine. It took quite a while, but that was installed to run about 60-70% of the campus power and almost all of the heat. We lowered our carbon footprint about 40%. That's with a natural gas turbine at Oakland University. So Luma, let's talk about Allen Brothers over here in Rochester Hills, just south of Walmart. Great guys, and they've been doing this forever. Elon Musk has been trying to do it for years. Robert Allen has like 11,000 email inquiries on his email inbox. So they get so many inquiries. People can't find a way to get building integrated solar that they find these guys online. And this is like the 4th generation of their panel. The new one they just made for me has got I'm the first one that has some ventilation holes here and an aluminum frame. But in the past, they did it on their standard metal panel. So they had this Bermuda roof, the gorgeous, quite expensive metal roofing. They do a lot of commercial or, wealthy folks' house. I did not do this edge to edge roof because I would price my own house out of my neighborhood and I would have gone broke. So I did what they call a kit. I'll show you that. They started with kits years ago and they moved away from it. So this is their flagship product that is edge to edge Bermuda metal roof. Very nice. This will last forever. And these pieces here are their Luma shingle, 80 watts a piece. I think this is down in the Virgin Islands. Gorgeous product. So this is an animation of their new version. So they're trying to design it such they have a little bit of ventilation. Building integrated solar heats up a bit more than normal. So you lose efficiency because the temperature is a bit hotter than in a standard rack mounted system. That is a negative of building integrated. But I think in the future, like in California, if every building is required to have some solar, whether it's 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatts, if it's a requirement to have some amount of solar, not everybody wants to have panels. So maybe some building integrated solutions that are attractive and maybe not ideal, but attractive aesthetically will be a good market share. So there's 4, 5, 6 building integrated shingle products out there I could point you towards. But I love our guys here trying to support these fine gentlemen here in Rochester Hills. So this is a load analysis. We don't have much time, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. So I kind of tried to make this up. This is a thumb in the air guesstimation of some load factors. So it's 12 months. I'm going to do some data analysis, and that's part 2. This is part 1 here. That's just the design. I've made up some load factors or capacity factors, I'm sorry, for the photovoltaics. It's pretty lousy in the winter months, 6, 6, 6, 8, 8, and much better in the.
Hey, Jim, your volume went down for some reason. Your voice changed. I don't know what it was.
I just muted myself. Is it any different?
You're still kind of subdued a little.
Well, it might take me a few minutes.
You were fine before, so.
I know, I didn't do anything. I'll just try to speak up. Because I think if I tried to troubleshoot, it'd take me a while. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, just speak up.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. A bunch of questions in chat. So basically, this analysis, if we had more time, I'd spend more time on it. But I'm facing west, so I diminished my capacity factor. This is just me guesstimating, like I said. And then the micro-CHP runs more in the wintertime because you're producing heat, and that heat has to be taken out of the tank, otherwise it won't run. So together, they provide all the energy for the house. So there should be no backup from the utility. I'm going to analyze that and report back on that. But it behooves us to optimize things, and I could even have a smaller PV system. I think a 2 or 3 kW PV system would have been ideal. Anyway, it just shows that there's an optimization routine here that you can reduce your capital costs, and the value of getting your heating out of the natural gas generator is part of the process. Okay, so installation photos. I did all the plumbing myself, black pipe. I think about a third of the valves I touched leaked when I touched them, built in 1977. So I had to replace a lot of valves. That was more work than I had hoped. Things like the floor sloping, I poured a little concrete pad for the tank. There's a little guy right there. There's the instantaneous hot water heater. I probably would have picked a different one if I tried again. It's so complicated, a lot of controls and sensors. But the micro-CHP is piped to the tank, and then the tank also serves. I took out the filter here and put in a coil. And meters, I think I blew away my code official guys that came in and didn't understand all the metering, but there's a gas meter for each appliance in the house. I can monitor them all separately, sub-meter them. I installed a coil on the return. I was going to do a different style here, but this seemed to be the easiest. I'm not quite done with that, but gas pressure, I increased the meter size, and I've got a gas meter there. So it's been operational for nearly a year, although my venting is needing some changes. I brought all 3 vents together, combustion vents, to one, because I was going to fabricate a carbon capture device. I've got a amine carbon capture design that I was going to fabricate out of PVC, but they didn't like me going away from code at all, so I probably have to change that, which is a pain. And I got a couple of other things that I have to change. So that's my mistake, because I am not a contractor, but I'm learning. So I'm going to insulate all this stuff, and the power metering has to go in. This isn't quite fully Americanized, so the voltage is still Japanese, and there's a disconnect up here in a voltage transformer, and then the controls so they can dial in. So I've got a technician out of Indiana. He dials in several times a week. So it's a good little unit. It's very quiet, smooth. It's got 3 settings. I typically don't even put on the full setting. I let it operate between 0 and 1 kilowatt. But once I have the thermal dump in there in the summer, I'll probably crank it up. Put an ECM motor in the fan and other things in the house. A lot of data. I won't dwell on this, but this is all the data that they can pull out of it, and they trend it. So the inverters, Magnesign, and the battery system is not installed yet. I'm going to have a transfer switch and the 2 panels in the corner. Of course, my code official, if anybody has if any of you have expertise in residential code, maybe I can borrow you for a little bit. But things like the sub pump being here, they want me to move my panel. That's going to be very troublesome to move my entire sub panel just because it's too close to this. But the sub pump has been dry for 30 years, but nonetheless, that's one of the many things that they want me to change. So this is historically what the house was doing. The interval metering for the power, the DT meter looked like this. So I really don't need 10 kilowatts. There's only, when the air conditioning runs, you can see there's a few days I don't run it a lot. It's an old, crappy, probably 11 SEER old unit that needs to go. That'll help a lot. That's on my list. But then when the unit started up, it's programmed to always import a little bit of power. So you can see this, the floor here is the import from the utility, controlled. And then the differential from here to here is the micro-CHP that's running. So the solar has not been commissioned yet. Solar's on the roof, but it has not been connected yet. So this is the best data I had. I gave this presentation a month ago. So my intention is to log the gas metering and put in the electrical sub-metering and have a lot of data to really monitor this house. That's the intention. So here's the historical energy, natural gas in red, electric. And you can see when the unit was turned on, the electric dropped substantially. My gas went up a bit, but the net cost should be a savings, although that it's a bit of a wild card because gas prices have gone up. They are coming back down. Gas prices, I think, will come down more in the coming months, but that is something to be determined. And as well as the carbon. I plan to monitor the carbon. And the idea is that the carbon footprint from the DTE grid versus a natural gas generator solar hybrid, I should have a much lower carbon footprint, even though I am using some fossil fuel. And I have backup power, and I have a heat source. So the micro-CHP can be, with the condensing output on the hot water side, can be 70, 80, even 90% efficient with that natural gas, as opposed to a furnace that might be 80, 90% with just heat. So let's see, a little blast from the past. When I was energy manager at Oakland University, one of my first projects, I applied to the state of Michigan to this guy I just met, Mr. John Sarver, and he issued some grants for some solar PV, one to Michigan State, one to Oakland University. We put on 10 kilowatts to this building integrated solar shingle. This is just off Welton Boulevard, just to the north here. Still there, although I've got to call up and check on this tree. This tree is growing over the shingles, and I don't think anybody cares except me. Anyway, this is a beautiful project. Uni-Solar, Stan Oshinsky's product. Great product. It's since been gone by the wayside. Here's Gary Allen. He was there helping. He's been loaded the shingles, the tiles, I guess. 80 watts each. They're working on a next generation where they're gonna have half cells and a little module on the back that can monitor the performance, and then have it removable so it can be in situ replaced in the field, which is pretty cool. I'd like to see Elon Musk do that. So I had my whole roof done. I took out a loan from Michigan Saves, about $30,000, a little bit more for the whole project. That includes my shingles and the roofing, solar roofing. So that's what it looks like, 4.8 kilowatts. They call this a kit. So instead of edge to edge, it probably would have cost me twice as much to do a full metal roof. And my neighborhood just wouldn't support that value. There we are. And there's Gary. There sure are some sure-footed folks that can jump around up there. I did I'm finishing up the combiner box. The rapid shutdown and all the code requirements are changing, and these don't have the ability to get in there and do the 2011, I forget, 2014. The code keeps changing. Now they want you to have rapid shutdown per module inside the array. And that's kind of challenging with the shingle, which is, very small, and you really don't have access to the individual wiring. So I'm going to try to use the quote unquote manufacturer's recommendation, and this shutdown per string. So there's 4 strings. So we got it set up to do that. Here, I was trying to get a higher resolution here. Apologize for the low res, but they came in maybe 9:30 in the morning. They were going. They took a break for lunch. So this little clip is a stop motion of the morning. This is, my house is near cross streets, Tinkin and Livernois, Fairview Farms. So that is the morning. Whoops. And then they came back after lunch and did the trim work. Looks like Looks like all the shingles were put in one shot in the morning, and then they did the trim work for a couple hours in the afternoon. That's pretty much it. And then the asphalt shingle roofing crew came back and they finished up around it. That's it. So if you could indulge me for just a minute or two, I'll be quick. I know there's a lot of questions already. This is my last presentation, but I want to just throw it at you folks because you guys are solar and green energy crowd for sure. How does CHP compare to a base load future something? DT just turned on the blue water plant, a gigawatt, 1.1 gigawatt facility up north in the Thumb area. $1 billion plant. I believe they want to do one more. If you look at their future goal of 40% gas, 40% renewable, 20% nuclear Fermi, that kind of, to me, would require one more of these. And I want to just compare a gigawatt central combined cycle gas plant with CHP. So I just put a spreadsheet together. I put a whole portfolio of CHP. So here's some 5 kilowatt units, 20,000 of them, just a whole bunch of them all across the state. This is just a theoretical thing. And 8,000, 20 kilowatts. There's 2 20 kilowatt CHP units going in at Tim Hortons in Ypsilanti from that Gridiron, Texas company. Some 500s. There's a couple of hospitals putting in CHP. A lot of universities have it. So just a whole portfolio of different units. So here's a 30 megawatt, 5 of them. So this is a gigawatt. And then I compared it and I had some capacity factors, some efficiencies and capacity factors. And for the combined cycle, that's a gas turbine making steam up the back end. And then that steam will then run a steam turbine together. I'm saying they make 55% electrical efficiency for the comparison for the gigawatt gas plant, similar to a blue water. And I compared the two. And they're both using natural gas, which produces 117 BTU, pounds of CO2 per MMBTU per million BTU. So that the CHP portfolio has got more resiliency. It avoids transportation wiring, and it's at the customer site. It has backup power available for customers, and you save about 600,000 tons of CO2 per year with CHP. Just an example. That's why I think that our future IRPs should really include a close look at CHP. If you're going to have base load power, it probably doesn't need to be batteries. It might be a mix of batteries and CHP. Next steps, I'm going to finalize my metering. I've got to connect my electrical solar system. I'd like to put a summer thermal dump so I can operate the CHP more in the summer when the hot water load is low. And I've got a couple functions. I got to add some control functions that I'll work on, and I'm not going to talk about that. I don't have time. Observations, I probably could have made this solar a little bit smaller, although my vision of the future is we're going to have so much solar and wind. We don't need as much batteries as people think, because I think we're going to have so much solar and wind in 50 years that, like your car engine, you have 100 kilowatt or 100 horsepower car engine. You don't run 100 horsepower all the time. You only run part of it as needed. It seems kind of criminal to throw away wind power and solar energy when you have excess, but I think that's what we'll do. We'll put in excess, and you'll have all this that you can turn down and modulate. And that seems really crazy, but I think that's the future, long distance, long far away, not just batteries, but some base load gas fired might be part of the mix as well. And it should be CHP. I don't favor the centralized large plants. And then weatherization, efficiency. It's not as sexy, but that's really what's got to go first, second, third. Then we put on the solar and these other fancy microgrids. A lot of talking. Okay. I'll stop there.
That was great, Jim. Can you stop the screen sharing? Then we can kind of see everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just mention that I put in a Luma solar system back in 2010. Back then, though, the panels were only 60 watts and there was no ventilation. So I did, I think, lose some production because of the heating up of the solar panels. I didn't realize that they had kind of adjusted to set up a system with kind of ventilation as part of the design. But one thing that I don't know if you mentioned, Jim, was the Allen brothers actually were a roofing company. And
they still are. Yes.
Yeah, they went from roofing into kind of diversified into solar. So when I replaced my roof, I was pretty confident that they were kind of know what they were doing with solar shingles because they were
Yep.
roofers.
Yep.
And
They're
that
very good roofers. They're very good roofers. And I think they're a small company. They've not wanted to really risk a lot of money and invest heavily, but I'm talking with them. I'm not the expert. Other folks like Mr. Clevey or other folks from the state or MEDC they're a Michigan solar manufacturer, and they're at the age now where they think they want to move and maybe build up their solar capacity. So I was trying to say, well, if you want to do a megawatt per year, what would that be? A new building, robotics, some automation. So they're at the stage where they might want to do that. So if there's anybody here interested, they have people that want to invest in them. It's just a big step for them. Local guys in a smaller company, but they're really good people. And I really wish that they can find the resources to do that.
Well, let's open it up to questions. If you would like to ask a question, just kind of raise your virtual hand, which you can find down in the reactions. And then because we have a bunch of, I can't see everybody from where I am. So if you can just.
I'll go look in the chat as well, but
Yeah,
feel
go
free to
look in
speak
the
up.
chat. Good idea,
Feel
Jim.
free to speak up. Hot tubs or I know one system I saw had an under driveway snow melt, but in the wintertime you can use it. So it's the summer when you need to have a source for it. Invite your neighbors over, maybe a greenhouse. Oh, did someone?
Hey, did I just see Tom Borden do screen sharing?
Someone did a screen share.
I think, hey, Tom, can you stop screen sharing? But anyway, John, go ahead with your question, John Freeman.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Jim, for your presentation. I guess I have two questions. The first question is, why did you decide to go with solar shingles? And then secondly, you obviously are very analytical. So why did you choose solar shingles over normal solar panels? In other words, how does the efficiency of solar panels in terms of producing power compare to the efficiency of solar shingles in terms of producing power?
Yeah, I'll be honest. It's the fact that I love these guys. I want to support these guys and show off their product. They haven't done any kits in many years. So I'm the first kit they've done in many years. Janice Means and I are on I've kind of walked away from the ASHRAE committee. It's within the solar technical committee. I've been a no-show for a couple of years, but a lot of people in that group, and including me, are big fans of building integrated. I think that's got a huge part for the future. It costs more, it's less efficient. And I totally agree with your line of questioning. Why would you do that if you can get more solar for less money, more efficient? So yes, yes, and yes. But I just think that if that market's solution can have more research, and I just think that's part of the future solution. I think eventually everybody's going to be required per code or per something to have some amount of solar on their buildings, like California. I see that in the future. So not everybody wants to have panels and racks, and that just could be another aesthetic solution. That's all. That's my opinion.
Have you had a chance to look at Tesla's solar shingles? I mean, is that a viable product? Is it comparable to Luma?
I don't know about the technical side of it. There's Certainteed has one, Suntegra has one, a couple of them come and gone, but Elon Musk got couple hundred million from the state of New York to put in a manufacturing plant, and they've been floundering for years. Basically, they thought they could just build it. It's easy. It's like building a rocket. We'll make it and we'll make it work. Well, they learned that solar roofing is complicated. It's roofing. So they delayed several years putting out a product, and then when they have, if you look at their website now, you get to pick 3 categories: easy, medium, moderate, and complex. So the pricing went way up, and they have now the choice to pick a complex roof, which is probably going to cost you a fortune. They figured out that, oh geez, roofing is challenging. But I think they've got a product. I don't know much about the technical specs, but these guys here in Rochester Hills, our neighbors, they've been doing it well for years, and they can put on a beautiful roof. But it is a fair bit of money. You're going to spend a bit more on building integrated. But if they manufactured 5 megawatts a year with some automation, franchise it out, I'm confident the price could come down substantially.
Yeah, I'm guessing too that, the manufacturers of solar roofing, are trying to work with the roofers and the builders, because, you know, if you just think in terms of the logistics of solar roofing, it makes more sense for new homes than retrofits. And I'm under the impression that some of the manufacturers are kind of going in that direction, because it just, and you know, the construction industry is pretty conservative, so they're probably having
Yeah.
some challenges kind of trying to talk roofers and builders into doing it.
Yep.
Janice, go ahead with your question.
Okay, well, it's more of a comment than a question, if you don't mind. I think that even though you're saying it's harder to do on a retrofit, if we're talking about historic buildings, that you have to be very careful to keep them looking the same. I
Right.
think that integrated panels, building integrated panels work very well, and I'm very fond of them too.
Yep, I knew that. Yeah,
I
aesthetically,
know you do.
they have some aesthetic benefits that are unparalleled. In some cases, you have to have something that looks unobtrusive. So it serves a function.
Yeah, and actually, when I put my system in back 2010, that was important to me, because I was talking my wife into going along with the solar system. And I kept mentioning, you know, it's going to look just like the roof, you know, it's not going to stick out. And actually, that was a good argument for her. Jim, go ahead. James?
Oh, me or somebody got a question?
James Facker, go ahead with your question.
There we go. Hi. I guess this is sort of in line with the previous question. Roofing, I've built a number of homes or homes and plants just personally with contractors, and I hate shingles. I absolutely hate shingles. Shingles are stupid, and metal roofs are so much better. And the metal roofs look industrial. So the metal roofing companies have created metal roofs that look like shingles or like terracotta or whatever aesthetic you want.
Right.
We have a 40 kilowatts of solar on our company roof, and we have just panels, kind of non-optimized for angle, flat on the roof, but a bunch of them, and it's worked out fantastically, except for the expiring of the solar currents net metering program, and but still great. But I wonder if anybody is, but I worry that in pursuing the shingle look, you're integrating a whole lot of small panels. You've got tons of interconnections. They're all hidden because you can't hang them out in the middle of the roof, or you ruin the shingle look. And I worry that that's going to be a big liability, reliability wise. And I wonder if anybody's doing a similar thing to what the metal roof people have done and made large panels, large solar panels that still have a shingly look, but are interconnected at the factory in big areas to increase the reliability and reduce the labor.
Yeah, you're onto something there. I think the counterintuitive, well, counterbalancing forces there, but I doubt if you're ever going to have a really large panel that is building integrated. Although I've seen some commercial ones, SunPower or somebody had these tiles that are quite large, but Gary Allen is envisioning his next generation with this metal frame. They're going to go to half cells. They're going to have a little electronic module on the back. I don't think it's a microinverter or an optimizer, but it's a communication device that monitors the performance, and then they're made so that you can remove it in the field. Right now, if you want to remove it off their old system, you destroy it, and it's a job. I mean, you're working with tempered glass, and it's a job to destroy that thing, get it off, and it's risky. But now the new ones, they want to make it field replaceable and monitoring to identify bad panels. So that's his vision for the next generation that they're working on right now. So good idea.
Yeah, it's evolving quickly, and it's exciting because it's so cost effective. That's we've only been waiting for this for 40 years or so, and it's happening. So
yeah, real quick, you mentioned this incentive, the solar something incentive, but I just gave a presentation to one of my teams. I got a group in Grand Rapids I support that's out west. All these tax incentives, the infrastructure bill and the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, so-called. A lot of good stuff in there. And I'm mostly commercial focused. I'm not gleaning through all the residential stuff, although the electrification, $14,000. It's got income-based measures in there. But if anybody wants to do another presentation or offline, talk about the commercial stuff. I mean, there's the K-12 schools for small manufacturers. There's some some infrastructure bill stuff that's coming out next quarter that hasn't been released yet. But the tax incentives, if you're in a greenfield or a brownfield or an energy community next to a coal mine closure, which is Trenton Channel and River Rouge and all of Grand Rapids, all of Muskegon, Escanaba, and some other places, you get another 10% bonus. If you're American made, you can get 10% bonus. You can get, advanced rapid bonus depreciation. You can get another something out of that. So you can get a 50+% credit on a solar installation. CHP, there's hydrogen credits in there. There's just a whole bunch of stuff. So I'll stop there. But if anybody wants to talk more about that,
I'm really excited about the heat pump aspect of that, because now unbelievably solar plus high efficiency heat pumps in the 300 to 500% efficiency range are all of a sudden cheaper than natural gas. Infrastructure cost is a bit, but it's just the totally electric house. I'm working on a plan to get my house in the woods totally solar, and it can be done now and be cost effective. And I can get this gas stove out of here, and I can get rid of the gas dryer, and so awesome stuff. And lots of the credits look really good for that. Thank you.
Charles, go ahead with your question. Charles.
Yeah, hi, Jim. It's great seeing you again after
Howdy.
years. I'm this is really exciting about the CHP for residential. I'd always heard about industrial applications.
Or church.
Pardon?
Or a church.
Yeah, church. Anyways, my question is, that you're kind of like a guinea pig for this, I think, because I've heard you're about one of the first residential applications of this technology, although it's been around forever. How, now that you've done that, is there certain terms of specs in terms of housing that it's cost effective or it isn't? And you look at that, compare with the geothermal approach where you use different mix and maxes. So just some high altitude generic reflections now, some hindsight you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I mean, this particular model, I wish they'd made it a full American version. There's a few things in there, nuts and bolts for since I did all the installation myself. I won't do it again. I enjoyed it, but cutting and threading black pipe and going through all I learned a lot. There's other models out there. I'm not the only one. There's quite a few, but it's a lot more common in Japan and Europe by far. But I think the larger houses are probably more in tune for this kind of stuff. The cost has always been the problem. There's actually a Michigan company. There's a Michigan company, Ingenuity Power Systems. They've got a small military style opposed piston engine. They're based out of New York, but they bought a racing engine company in Clinton Township, and they're going to manufacture there. That unit is like 8 kilowatts, but they're saying they can do it for like under $2,000 per kilowatt. So that's small commercial or residential. And it's an appliance. It's a tank with a shroud around it, and the engine's on top. So it's got hot water connections and power connections, and it's a quote unquote appliance. So it's really looking like it's going to simplify the installation. If they do what they say they're going to do, you might see that at Lowe's or Home Depot in a couple of years. But Ingenuity Power Systems, they're starting up their prototyping and field testing. They've already produced a few. So that's probably doesn't answer your question really well. It's better suited for larger buildings, small commercial. Actually, for my mom and her church in Wisconsin, I just did a church decarbonization presentation for the diocesan convention. It's a YouTube video. I can share that with you. But it goes through all the different steps, and CHP being one of many. Obviously, there's a lot of different paths towards decarbonization, but kind of got to do a whole bunch of different things together, not just the one. CHP still uses natural gas, so to cover your natural gas carbon footprint, you got to do some other stuff to to get further down that road. So I didn't quite answer your question. I think cost has been a problem. Small size is pretty rare, so the bigger the better. But it's much easier to get a good payback with the commercial building. That's for sure.
Dale, go ahead with your question.
All right, James, just really impressed with your creativity and ingenuity putting this all together. You mentioned wanting to experiment with some carbon capture, which is perked my ear up. I was also curious if you'd done anything to think about thermal storage. I've been following different thermal storage. There it is. All right. I've been watching different thermal storage ideas, including there's one in Finland that was recently kind of publicized fairly broadly, Polar Night Energy with hot sand storage.
Yeah.
Have you explored that at all and what you're looking at here with CHP?
I love the idea. I've just got the 60-gallon hot water tank, and I probably don't have the time or energy or budget to do much more. I mean, like Upland Hills Ecological Awareness Center had the rock bed storage from their, which is connected to a solar thermal air heater. So there are things you can do, phase change materials and things. But I think my little project here is probably gonna sit tight for a while. I'm gonna finish it. It's not quite finished yet, and then monitor it for several years and get some data out of it. But yeah, the more thermal storage you can put in, the more flexible you'll be. So that, a bigger tank, if I put 100 or 120 gallon tank, that probably would have been nice. But then basically balancing your loads out, your inputs and your loads, balancing things out. That's really the name of the game. You want to make this componentry small enough to save on your capital cost and to fully utilize it. So if you buy a piece of equipment, you don't want to use it 2 hours of the year. You want to use it, 8,000 hours a year. That's how you get the most value out of anything you buy. Is a general design philosophy.
Yeah, good. Quick follow-up question. In thinking about the hot sand thing, I ended up looking at how do I get lots of insulation so I could possibly consider seasonal storage. You'd thrown out the idea of having to dump some heat in the summer, or could you store that for winter? Have you ever played around with VIPs, vacuum insulated panels? Ever run into that technology?
I've seen them. Yep, I was at a conference and the guy was passing one around, little aluminum foam vacuum pack thingy. Pretty cool. It's kind of scary that you put one little puncture in it and it's going to lose its functionality. But yeah, they're really cool. Yeah, there's a company, I don't know if they're Australian or some company that's talking about a super high temperature sand battery. And then I think they're going to use, maybe it's a power cycle. I think they're going to make it, I don't know if it's an organic Rankine cycle, but I think they're going to make electricity off the heat, but store the heat in a really high temperature in sand. But I think it was a power system, not just a thermal system. That's been in the news a bit. I've seen some residential designs where you have a huge gravel bed down below the house in like almost another story. But you need a lot of space. Water is really good, but sand and stone and things are good as well. I mean, I just passive solar designs, the old school ways where you have trome walls and passive solar impinging upon rock and stone and masonry. I mean, that's Janice. She's shaking her head. That's the kind of historical ancient techniques that work really well. But that's not seasonal, of course. That's at Oakland University. We put in the geothermal solar thermal project. Steve DeBardine did the geothermal design there, and we toyed with the idea of doing some seasonal storage, oversizing a one ground borehole array, but I think that was too risky and too new. But I've seen there's a couple seasonal storage district systems. Actually, ASHRAE, go back to ASHRAE. We did a presentation 5+ years ago. And we did some district systems, and it was Canadian. Calgary or somewhere up in Canada, there's a district system that had a seasonal storage for a solar thermal. They basically had a ground big, I don't know if it's boreholes or something. Anyway, I won't get into it. If you want to learn more about it, I got a presentation I can send it to your way. But it's been toyed with a couple places in Europe that I'm familiar with, and the one Canadian project, seasonal storage.
Yeah, a long time ago, during a solar home tour, I visited a home, Southwest Michigan, that the whole basement was full of sand for seasonal storage. But somebody didn't take into consideration moisture there was in the sand. So as the solar system kind of heated up the sand, all the moisture was released into the house. So it was a little humid in the house for quite a while. So that was interesting. Of course, that's probably back in the 70s where everybody was experimenting. James, do you have another question? Okay, John, go ahead. John Gorley.
Thanks, John. Jim, it would have been a lot simpler. I mean, this is kind of a question to provoke you, I think. It would have been a lot simpler just to put in a really big solar array and put in a natural gas generator in order to go off grid. And I'm wondering what the trade-offs are between that approach and the one that you took. And then I'm going to follow
Power only generator?
What's that?
By natural gas generator, you mean a power only generator for backup?
Right. Just a gen set, you know.
Yep.
And where I'm going with this is that in the long run, for global warming, we need to stop using fossil fuels altogether. And so what you're doing is a step in the right direction, but not getting all the way there. And so I'm wondering if you can argue that this is a good step, or is it just kind of a handyman's project?
Well, sorry, I got distracted. My cat's making some noise in the back. Not sure what he's doing. What a year ago, I would have said academically, the CHP is such a great solution. I mean, I don't think we're going to get all electric. I mean, I did some math to say what would it take to get Michigan all electric, and I could share that with you. The idea was to show the CHP solution as opposed to another blue water facility and the carbon it saves there, and then also show how hard it would be to be all electric in Michigan. So if you took all the petroleum, diesel, natural gas, coal, and converted it to all electric, we need 450% more generation, transmission, distribution, 450% more than we have now today. And we're not 100% renewable on our existing electric. So make the 100% we have now all electric with renewables and add 450% more. And then if we had a polar vortex day, I mean, imagine what happened in Texas, happened in Michigan. That's a life safety event. So our summer peak for electrical would no longer be in the summer, it'd be in the winter during heating season. That is a challenging engineering question. Also, we're looking at hydrogen as a fuel, solar green hydrogen and other, blue hydrogen, turquoise hydrogen, methane pyrolysis and carbon capture. I'm receiving a study on carbon capture in the next few days. And there's some tax credits on that. You can get up to $60 per ton, metric ton of carbon if you reuse it, and $85 per ton if you sequester it. Renewable natural gas. I have a study from ICF that was commissioned by the Michigan Public Service Commission I can share, showing how we can conceivably get to almost 20-25% renewable natural gas in the state of Michigan from biogenic sources. So with hydrogen, carbon capture, methane, we have this huge infrastructure of natural gas. I work for the gas company, by the way, but I left Oakland University after 16 years, mainly because I love sustainable energy in general. And I put in geothermal, solar, studied wind, biomass wood chip boiler. I've done a lot of different stuff, but we have this huge infrastructure of gas. And we are starting to put renewable energy into the gas grid. Yes, it does have a carbon molecule, but it can be renewable. And it's probably just a couple % renewable now. And that's usually going to transportation contracts because of these RINs, these renewable energy transportation subsidies in the California LCFS, which is another subsidy. But why would we throw away $1 trillion gas infrastructure that has energy storage and transportation and all this functionality and heating and then serves the industrial community when we probably can't get to all electric? So I think we need to figure out how to make that damn gas grid renewable as well. And we're on that path. There's a lot of talk on that. These subsidies are fairly balanced the way the federal legislation came out. There's a lot of money's spread across. So there's money, $3 per kilogram of hydrogen, if you can make it low carbon hydrogen production. So you're going to see a lot of activity in hydrogen, renewable natural gas, and carbon capture. Those are all engineering solutions. But I agree. I think for a lot of buildings, the all electric path is conceivable, but I don't think any northern climate is going to be all electric completely in our lifetime. That's just, I mean, the math that I did that showed 450%. Other people have had similar, 300, 400, 500% factors of increase in electrical. So that's transmission lines, distribution, and generation. What are we in Michigan? 20%, 15% renewable. So if you can envision getting to 100% times 4 to get all electric. But going back to efficiency, weatherization, not as sexy as solar panels, but that's where we got to invest a lot of money. Weatherization, if we used half the amount of energy we have, that'll get us half the way there. Oh, and the last thing, I'm on my soapbox here. Sorry, I've been drinking coffee. So we throw away about 60% of our energy in the United States. If you look at those Lawrence Livermore National Lab, those energy flow diagrams, I know it's fossil fuel and heat engines, and that's the culprit. You might say, well, stop doing that. We won't have that loss. But about 60% of our energy in this country, we throw back to Mother Nature through cooling towers, the radiator in your car, rivers and lakes, through power plants, any heat engine. So that 60% is what cogeneration captures. So I'm reusing some of that, putting it back in my house for heating. So that's the interesting thing when you pull up the carpet, look underneath in the United States energy flow diagrams. But okay.
Thanks,
stop
Jim.
there.
That's a good and different perspective. Peter, you get the last question.
Okay. Well, I'm picking up on your weatherization comments. And early in your presentation, you mentioned that your house was not well built. And you did a blower door test. So I'm curious what measures you installed in order to seal air leaks, and what was the new blower door test when you finished?
Well, it's work in progress. I didn't do the second test yet because I was doing the work myself, and my habit of doing work is 80%, and then I did the next 20 over the next couple of years. So sill plates, basement, took out the little insulation there and trying to seal all the piping and wiring, and sill plate with foam. I put R60 in the attic. Technically, I should have taken all the insulation out, foamed it, taped it, and put it back, but I didn't do that. I just put another 1.5 feet of insulation on top, and I've been caulking around windows and door frames and things, and I've got to replace a couple windows. So I've been picking away at the obvious things, a couple gaps here and there. But I mean, the guy had his blower door thing on the front door, and I think it was at its highest setting, or just near the highest setting. It was probably I think he said equivalent of a 2-foot square opening or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice.
Well, we're up to 8 o'clock, and Jim, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. You've given us a lot to think about, and we'll have to have you come back to down the road, because it looks like definitely it's a work in progress, and you're going to learn a lot more interesting stuff as you progress. So thanks again, and thanks to everybody for attending. And hope you can join us again next Thursday. John, I'll give you the last second, John Freeman, to you want to say a little about our annual meeting in December 3rd?
Yeah, we have our year begin meeting on Saturday, December 3rd, starting at 9:30. It runs to 3 o'clock. We're going to have a series of amazing presentations about some of the work that GLREA is doing this year and what we're planning on doing next year. We have a professor, Mark Jacobson. Jacobs is going to be speaking. He has literally designed a plan for every state in this country to be able to go full renewables. And I'd be interested in Jim's analysis of Professor Jacobs's proposal for Michigan. He's a professor at Stanford, and he runs he's the co-founder of a think tank, a solutions project of some sort. Anyway, I sent out an email today to the entire membership about this event. You know, we do charge $25 per ticket. It's tax deductible because GLREA is a nonprofit. So I would encourage all of you to buy a ticket and join us. For those of you that have joined us in the past, I think you all know it's a wonderful event. And we also give out a bunch of awards that Mark Clevey will be giving out, and we announce our board elections. And we're also going to be having a session on something that Jim referenced, which is the Inflation Reduction Act. This is, as Jim said, this is an incredibly important new federal law, and it's massive. And so even though we had a renewable energy seminar on this topic about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we want to go back at it because it's so important, particularly for the energy efficiency stuff. So we're going to talk about that as well. So join us on December 3rd, and we look forward to it. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for joining us tonight. And again, thanks Jim for a very interesting presentation, and hope to see you next Thursday. Take care.